If they're a bad spirit baby, they get a black-skinned body. That's what they teach. Mormon Doctrine by Bruce McConkie. He said, it's a divine decree. Cain, Ham, and the whole Negro race have been cursed with black skin, the mark of Cain. Mormon Apostle Peterson said, if there's a drop of Negro blood in my children, as I've read to you, they receive the curse. Mormon President Brigham Young said, shall I tell you the law of God regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, under the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. You should read some books about Mormonism and see what they've done in the last few hundred years over this teaching of racial superiority. See, racism was popular in the 1800s. I mean, they would buy the slaves and put them on ships and pack them in as tight as they could. If a bunch died, oh well, save as many as you can. But they sold them on the market. Some people thought some leaders in America thought the Aborigines were not as evolved as the white man because the Aborigines have a bigger jaw. Their jaw bones are bigger. Eskimos in Alaska have the same thing. They have bigger jaw bones. And they said, well, that's because they've evolved. They're not as evolved from the apes as we are. No, it's because they use their jaws all the time like a vice. They don't carry a toolbox around with them. They wander around a lot, so they don't want to carry 50 pounds of tools. When they want to pull the skin off of something, they hold it in their teeth and pull the skin off. They use their teeth. They use their jaw muscles all the time. And any bodybuilder will tell you the more you use your muscles, the bigger your bones get. It actually develops the bones also. The mental life of savages rises little above that of higher mammals, especially the apes, with which they are genetically connected. The intelligence moves within the narrowest bounds, and one can no more or less speak of their reason than that of the more intelligent animals. These lower races, such as the Vedas or Australian Negroes, are psychologically nearer to the mammals, apes or dogs, than to civilized Europeans. We must therefore assign a totally different value to their lives. That's Ernst Haeckel, the guy that lied about the gill slits. At the beginning of the white settlement, this is in Australia, there were an estimated 300,000 Aborigines all over Australia. Aborigines were viewed by the settlers as primitive, savage, unchanging. In addition to warfare, killings, water, flour, and sugar were poisoned, and diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza were introduced intentionally to lower the population. It was the law. You could kill Aborigines if you wanted. How many saw the movie Quigley Down Under, where he was brought in to kill the Aborigines? Because he was a marksman. Every single Tasmanian Aborigine was killed. Why? I think the evolution theory is directly responsible for what happened to the slaughter of the Aborigines. These two people went to Australia to collect skulls for the museums in America. Here's your article right here. A New South Wales missionary was a horrified witness to the slaughter by mounted police of a group of dozens of Aboriginal men, women, and children. 45 heads were boiled down and the best 10 skulls packed off for overseas. They shot them just to get the bones. Smithsonian has 33,000 sets of human remains in their basement. They call it the Army of the Potomac. These are used as evidence for evolution. Charles Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton, started a movement called the Eugenics movement to purify the human race. Let's get rid of some of these inferior races. They drew in from all branches of science to make eugenics, to improve humanity. We could spend days talking about eugenics, but these ideas gave rise to American laws that empowered doctors to sterilize people they judged to be unfit. As a result, Black estimates that some 60,000 people were sterilized in the United States over the course of the 20th century. Some doctor thought, oh, they're not fit to be a mom or a dad. They sterilized them. This is in America. The most chilling, though, were the ways which American eugenics influenced their German counterparts. Hitler said, I have studied with great interest the laws of several American states concerning the prevention and reproduction by people whose progeny would, in all probability, be of no value or be injurious to the racial stock. In 1904, St. Louis had the World's Fair. They brought in 2,000 what they said were primitive people and had a big display about the primitive people to demonstrate the superiority of the white man. That's 100 years ago, folks. Oda Benga was put in a cage with chimpanzees. He was taken away from his wife and 2 kids. They put him in with the chimpanzees as part of the display so people can come by and laugh at how primitive the pygmies were. He died. He committed suicide. Oda did. He's buried in Lynchburg, Virginia. Roosevelt thought the Indians were an inferior species because they hadn't evolved as far. Roosevelt said, "I wish the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding." He thought the immigrants from Europe, Scotland, Ireland, and the Orient were a threat to American society. How many of you have ancestors from one of those places? Oh, you're inferior species, according to these guys, okay? In 1871, Congress scrapped all treaties with the Indians and moved them off to the reservation system they're still using today. The Cherokees, down where we're from in Florida in that area, were moved off to Oklahoma, or to Indiana, Oklahoma, Indian Territory. 1/3 of them died along the forced journey, called the Trail of Tears, because our leaders thought they were an inferior species. We could spend all day on that one. The Bible says we've all got one Father. No reason to be a racist. All God hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell upon the earth. Darwin also said, a married man is a poor slave, worse than a Negro. I never met his wife, but if a guy said that, if a college professor said that today, how long would he keep his job? Or his life? Yeah. Darwin said the chief distinction in intellectual powers of the two sexes is shown by man's attaining to a higher eminence in whatever he takes up than can woman. Whether requiring deep thought, reason, or imagination, or merely the use of senses and hands, the average mental power in man must be above that of women. He said man has ultimately become superior to women, poetry, strength, voice, etc. Darwin believed in inbreeding. He married his first cousin, Emma Wedgwood. He wanted to have a superior stock. They produced 10 children. Mary died shortly after birth. Anne died at age 10. Robert, born retarded, died at 19 months. Henrietta had a serious nervous breakdown. Three of his 6 sons were so ill, they ill so often, Charles thought they were semi-invalids. So much for your superior stock, Charlie. Evolution is a bad tree, has a bad root, brings forth evil fruit. Evolution is the foundation for Nazism. Why did Hitler do what he did? Now, Mussolini, the dictator in Italy, thought the Italians were the superior species that deserved to rule the world. So did the Germans, so they linked up together for a while. So they thought, well, we'll just rule it together, and then when we get too many people, we'll decide between the two of us who's the strongest. Mussolini and Hitler were strong believers in evolution. Now, Hitler believed the Germans were the superior race that deserved to rule the world. Arthur Keith said, the German Führer has consistently sought to make the practice of Germany conform to the theory of evolution. A direct line runs from Darwin through the father of eugenics movement, Darwin's cousin Francis Galton, to the extermination camps of Nazi Europe. Hitler's book that he wrote, Mein Kampf, written in 1924 while he was much of it while he was in prison between the two wars, it's full of evolution. You ought to read the book. It's a boring read for one thing, but it's just absolutely full of his evolution philosophy. Since the time he was a boy, he was dominated by this one thinking that one race is superior to another because of evolution. In this book, while 6 million died, it tells about the story where Hitler offered to send the Jews to anybody who would take them. Hitler said, do you want the Jews? I'll send them to you on luxury ships if you want them. Did you know America refused to take the Jews? Roosevelt said, we don't want them. America had very racist immigration policies before World War II. Long stories there. You can read about the ship that came to Cuba and tried to unload their Jews and said, basically, we don't want them. They sailed all the way up the east coast of America. Every port in America refused to allow 900 some Jews to get off the boat. So they sent them back to Europe.